All right, so we're going to be doing some more advanced triple triad talk, this time talking about more complicated moves from the position we looked at. So last time we covered all the moves in 5 and how they are a disaster. Red has very good replies in 3 and 7. So instead this time, Blue's going to think, okay, 3 and 7 are the squares Red can use so powerfully. What can I do in those squares to occupy them successfully myself? So this time we're going to look at moves in 7, and next time I'm going to go on to moves in 3. I think an important question is there a difference between moves in 3 and 7? 7 obviously has the potential to take a 6-4 lead. Might there be reasons Blue would prefer to go in 3? I'm going to get to that next time, but I think there is a difference between 3 and 7 that's quite important, and Blue will generally get better results by playing in one of those two squares. So if you want to think about that and think, which do you think is better, that might be a useful thing to do. The other really important question when looking at a move in 3 and 7 is simply, what do we want to achieve? Do we want to achieve safety? Do we want to achieve something else? What is Blue trying to do with moves in 3 and 7? And today I think we're really going to get a good feel for what Blue should be looking for. So the most obvious move is 7, 6, 3, 2, and 7 of moves in 7. This is safe. Red cannot take it. It captures a card to take a 6-4 lead. This move looks very good. It's very appealing, and it loses. And you can pause the video if you'd like to try to find the win for Red. It's not, a particularly hard solve. This is a fairly straightforwardly looking move, but this clearly looks like the best move in 7, and it definitely isn't. And that should give us a kind of hint that maybe safety isn't all that's going to matter in these L structures. Maybe we have to be looking for something else. So the two squares Red should look for at first are those that can secure a card. If 5 can capture 4, or if 8 can capture 7. Here, of course, there are no captures in 8 of 7, so Red should be looking at 5. And what's the card that's going to do the best work in 5 for Red to play? The answer is 6, 7, 2, 3, and 5. This does a bunch of things. 1, it uses our weakest card, because generally speaking, the game is now going to have a leftward tilt, and this is by far our worst card going left. It sets up a combo threat in 8. We now have a same in 8, and Blue is basically obliged to block it. It captures 4, which was really important to any move we were going to play in 5. And this just wins on the spot. For instance, if they go 3, 2, 7, 6, and 3, tying up the score and playing safely, we can win with 2, 6, 3, 6, and 8. And we take the card in 7, and our last card is good enough to capture anything they could play that captures us in 9. So this wins pretty straightforwardly. Another line is they could think I need to block 8. The only kind of safe-ish way to do so might be 2, 7, 6, 3, and 8, but we can go 3, 2, 7, 6, and 3, and we win there. They have no captures except the 1 and 6 with 6, 3, 2, 7, and then we capture bomb and 8 to end it. Or if they block 8 with 6, 3, 2, 7, we can go 2, 6, 3, 6, and 3, and it all works out quite nicely well again. They have given up all their up value there, so that card is safe in 3. So I think this wins pretty straightforwardly, and it shows us that their move in 7 really wasn't very hard to beat. If we can occupy 5, and specifically if we can use our weakest card in 5, if we can set things up, it's going to be pretty easy to beat moves in 7. So let's try another move in 7. Now, I screwed this one up. I listed the score wrong. You'll see it says Red is up 6-4. Of course, Blue is up 6-4, but it's an interesting position because this move looks quite dumb, right? It has a 3 out facing, their Cactuar in 4 has a 2 out facing. None of their cards are at all safe. And it looks like a kind of weird and hard move to find. If this is good, how would I know to look at this? But it's actually a much better move in 7 and a much harder move to beat. And the reason for that is in these L's, and this is often called an L structure. And I should talk a little about so in an L, there is basically one card that has a chance to be secured. And in this case, it's the card in 1, right? It's the only card that's surrounded. And second turn often achieves Ls where the secured card is theirs. Here, first turn has the secured card. So I tend to call these, from second turn's perspective, because second turn sets up the L structure, this is an unsecured L because second turn does not have the secured card. And if they did, I would call this a secured L. But the important thing about these unsecured Ls is safety is not what matters. And this is going to be true over and over. I'm going to say this over and over and over. It's that control of the 5 square matters more than anything. And in the last example, blue played in 7 safely, but it had no effect on 5. Red could happily play their cards in 5, set up stuff in 5, and we had no rejoinder to it as the blue player. This move directly fights against red's most desired move in 5, and that makes it already is more likely to be a good move. Even though it looks weird, it looks hard to find, if you treat these positions as 5 is the all-important square and I need to fight 5, then this kind of move is easier to find and very hard to beat. So now, of course, 6, 7, 2, 3, and 5 doesn't work at all. We have an S in 8. It collapses. They, in fact, don't have a way to capture us in 8 without being comboed back, because if red plays Tiamat in 8, 3, 2, 7, 6, we have the same with King Behemoth in 5. And if red captures with 2, 6, 3, 6 in 8, then we still have Bomb capturing lots of things in 5, or we can combo it back with Tiamat in 9, which can plus wall that. So red doesn't actually have a good way to take an 8, and we have stopped their most desirable move in 5. So red still has plays in 5. They have 2 other cards that they can play in 5 that capture 4, and that's very important. But they're not the cards red really wanted to play there, and we're going to be able to tie against both. For instance, after 2, 6, 3, 6, and 5, making the game 5, 5, we can play 2, 7, 6, 3, and 3, Bomb there, and Bomb will be safe, and that's enough to secure a tie. And you can and probably should calculate it out, but I don't want to go through too many lines. But suffice it to say, red didn't use the card they wanted to use in 5, and blue had a pretty easy time tying. Now, it's a little harder to tie against Tiamat in 5, 3, 2, 7, 6. It's 5, 5. Now, 2, 7, 6, 3, and 3 does not work because red has set up the plus and 6. This is going to be another really common theme. We have a move. We see their move that stops our move from working. What's a slightly different move we could make that doesn't have the same problem? And 3, 2, 7, 6, and 5, it's a lot harder for blue to find the tie because they don't have easy ties like 2, 7, 6, 3, and 3. So I think that's just like in general a useful thing for calculation is I found a move, there were a bunch of similar looking moves. I pick one, I calculate that, and I start to see what works and doesn't work. And I see, would it be more useful to have the other card left over instead of the card I had left over with this? Would it be useful to have this slightly different outfacing number because that would stop a move they'd make? And here, 3, 2, 7, 6, and 5 is a much harder move for blue to deal with than 2, 6, 3, 6. You'll notice also, unlike 2, 6, 3, 6, and 5, it sets up a plus and 8, because under Lizard and 8, 2, 6, 3, 6 now has a plus. So just from looking at the previous move and where it didn't work and looking at this move, we can see, yes, this move sets up some combos, the other didn't, and stops the obvious opposing move. So we still can tie, and the tie here is 2, 7, 6, 3, and 8. It is takeable, but if it's takeable, we can double capture back, and red doesn't have a win here. I think red's sneakiest try is 6, 7, 2, 3, and 9 in response, not capturing anything. But for blue to tie there, they have to find 7, 6, 3, 2, and 3, and it's 3 down facing, cannot be taken by under Lizard. But other moves would lose, and at least in that line, blue has to be a little careful. So I think that's red's best try. But suffice it to say, with this weird move in 7, 6, 3, 2, 7, and 7, with the only idea of it is to fight for 5, it's already a much harder move to beat than the safe move in 7 was. And that's just so telling that what this position is about is control of 5. And a move that even minimally fights for 5 is often going to be better than a move that's safe. Now, 6, 3, 2, 7 does not tie. Red has a win. We're going to get to that win. But it's worth saying it's really hard to beat a move that fights for 5 in these unsecured L structures. And that's just a really important piece of understanding these structures. So, where should red look next? They didn't find a win in 5. There's not a win in 8. Where do you look next? And the answer is 3. It's clearly been a desirable place to go in a lot of lines we've looked at, and I'm going to call it an elongated L when there's cards in 1, 2, 3, 4, and 7, because, the L line has gone out a little further, and that's going to be the most likely place to go. So what should red play there? Well, the most obvious move is 3-2-7-6 there. It's safe, it's strong, it's the perfect corner for the card. You know, it looks great, right? Just like how 7-6-3-2 and 7 for blue last turn looked great. And again, this move loses, which speaks so much to how irrelevant safety is compared to controlling 5. Why does it lose? Well, 7-6-3-2 and 5 captures 2, putting blue up 6-4. It sets blue up with a plus in 6, and it doesn't give red any pluses anywhere, and that move ends up just winning the game. Red has to block 6, and then depending on which way red does so, blue has moves in either 8 or 9, and blue wins. And again, it's really easy to make moves like 3-2-7-6 and 3. It's safe, it looks good. If we don't calculate, it looks good. But if we change our heuristics, if we stop looking for safety and start looking for, I want to fight for 5. If I can go in 5, I do so. But we calculated it. I'm not going to win going in 5 as the red player in this position. I don't see anything in 8, so I'm going to go in 3. What should I do in 3? And the thought process should be the same as the thought process that led to blue going in 7 with the unsafe card. It should be, what do they want to put in 5, and how can I fight against it? So specifically, the card blue really wants to put in 5 is 7-6-3-2, as we've just seen. So we want something in 3 that sets up against 7-6-3-2 and 5. So we should look at this position and think, which move can we make that sets up against 7-6-3-2 and 5? And it's a little hard to see because I haven't gone back and shown the position on move 4, but the card in 2 is in fact blue before red's 5th move. So 6-7-2-3, while it would set up the same against 7-6-3-2 and 5, if we put 6-7-2-3 and 3, it would not in fact take the card in 2, so it would put a lot less pressure on blue because their move in 5 would not have to take 2. So the only move is going to be 2-6, 3-6, and 3. And this wins. And again, this looks weak. All our cards have outfacing values that are low. But again, if we treat it as this is all about 5, nothing matters but 5. I'm just going to say this over and over and over again. 5 is what matters. Control of 5 is what matters. Then this move makes a ton of sense. If they go 7-6-3-2 and 5, then we have sames and pluses all day in 6. If they go 2-7-6-3 and 5, which also takes the card in 2 due to plus, then we have both sames and plus wall in 8, and they don't have ways to combo back. And so if we say, okay, we just need to deal with 5, then we can find moves like this, and the move actually wins. So I think this is just a kind of incredible example, but not actually that weird an example, but these obvious moves in 3 and 7, first blue's move in 7 and then red's move in 3, taking the safe move in these structures, if it concedes 5, is a mistake. And the first priority is not to fight for safety, it's to fight for 5. And how do 3 and 7 affect 5? Well, they affect what's going to same or plus in 6 or 8. And so that's what these moves should be looking for. And I think this is a complicated point. Like, it's hard to find these moves. And you really need to have this sense of what matters is not safety, what matters is fighting over 5. So in the end, blue's clever move in 7 was clever. It puts a lot of pressure on red to find a win. It's hard to find the win. I think if you made that move, you'd really often manage a tie afterwards. And red's winning move followed the same idea of fighting for 5, not looking for immediate safety. So in unsecured L formations, from red's perspective, red wants to go in 5 if they can secure a card and won't be comboed. If that doesn't work, then see if you can take the corner that's showing, the card that blue just played in 7. Here that didn't work either. And if that doesn't work, the next option is to play in the other corner, which in this example was 3. And if red goes in the other corner, setting up that elongated L setup, the main move, the main purpose of the move should be to control 5. Safety's nice, but it's not the goal. Control of 5 is truly what we care about. From blue's perspective, the goal is, well, I think this is just a funny line. To fight against the board, first one must fight against what's not on the board. But I think that really speaks to these positions, is we have to fight against the potential cards that will go in 5. 5's everything. We want to set up combos against that square. And safety isn't everything, safety isn't going to be the important thing in this setup. It's going to be about controlling 5. Do I have another slide? No. Okay. So I guess that's it, but I think... Oh, I should say, so next time we're going to look at 3, and I think blue going in 3 is a better move in general than going in 7, and we'll get into why, but again, that's a good kind of thing to think about. But I think the core understanding of these L formations is that 5 is what matters. And if you're looking at other things before looking at how each move relates to 5, I think you're making mistakes, and I think that's a really interesting feature of these positions, and I hope me saying it 4,000 times got the message through. All right.